Hello, and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show where we bring on a very special guest, an honored guest here at the Hawks Nest. Seahawks Brendon Nelson makes his miraculous return to the channel here as we bring him back in. You guys asked for it. You said, let's do this. You guys got a good rapport. I agree with you. I like his mind. I like how he thinks. We're going to do this as a normal thing. So this week he is, of course, back on my show. Next week I'll be back over on his channel. And if you're already not subbed up to Seahawks Brendon Nelson, what are you doing? What are you doing? Come on, sub up. Man knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. He's on it every single day. As well as just before we dive into this, I do want to thank the sponsor of this show, Manscaped, manscaped.com. Go to manscaped.com today. Save 20% off your order and free shipping right now on your lower Manscaped products, either nose hair trimmers or the Lawnmower 4.0. They got a lot of great products. They sent them to me. It's really nice. Go there. Help support the show. If you need it, don't go to CVS. Don't cut your junk. So go to manscaped.com, N-E-S-T, save 20% and free shipping. All right, we got that out of the way, Brendon. Let's unpack this bag. Okay, the bag's got a bunch of clothing that's misstrewn and it's not folded and disorganized. Let's look one more time back at this Titans loss just before we peg forward here a bit to the to what we got going on this upcoming game, and kind of we're going to get to maybe some specific things with this. I do want just your general thoughts kind of out the gate, if you could, and then let's kind of get into a little more of the minutia stuff, I guess, to a degree.
Well, I think there's only one thing really worth talking about with this Titans game, and that's that LJ Collier got a QB pressure. So I don't know about you, but I think he's the real deal now. I'm believing in that.
Hall of Famer. It's a late blooming Hall of Famer at this point. I mean, that's
absolutely, man. I mean, you saw that play. I know you saw it.
It is like burned into my mind. I've never seen that kind of quickness with combined power and twitchiness. It was, I can't believe he didn't get the sack, frankly. When you're throwing those three things together, it's like it should go without saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. No, for real. This game, this Titans game, obviously a lot of interesting things happened in that game. I think we learned some stuff, but at the end of the day, there isn't a whole heck of a lot positive you can take away from that game. I feel like that Titans team does not have a good defense, and it's hard for me to believe they improved a lot this offseason because frankly, what they did against Arizona to me is indicative of the fact that they are not better. And it seemed like we had a hard time getting things going. And the most frustrating thing for me from this game was that it looked just like last year, where it was all about the big plays, big chunk plays. 51 yards to Lockett sets up a field goal. The broken play to Freddie Swain. I think Lockett had like a 65-yard touchdown as well. It was all big plays. And every drive was either big play and we get a score, or we go 3 and out. And there's a very interesting stat that's been making the rounds on Twitter the last couple of days, where the Seahawks are over the last couple years, really, but this year so far, they are second in the league in punts, and yet somehow they still have one of the better offenses in the league. So through 2 games, it's early, and I've already said many times, I'm going to give Waldron time to figure this stuff out. But to me, that offense on Sunday looked exactly like the Schottenheimer offense. That was the most frustrating thing. And that's my main takeaway from that game. We still have a ways to go there. Yeah. And looking at some of the comments from Wilson that were actually said earlier today, seems like he's still not totally getting some of the stuff that we would like him to get.
Lockett had one. Did you see the Lockett quote that was similar to that, where Lockett was pointing back to the same stuff we heard through the offseason? If we fell a little bit too much into our rhythm again of wanting to fall in love with the deep pass. It's literally a quote recently that just came up for it, where he just says exactly what they've been saying about, well, we got to change away from this. Yeah, you guys said you're going to change away from this. Why do you fall this easily back into the old habits of things? And I agree with you. I think that's basically how I look at this game. It sucks because I think both offensively and defensively, it was really echoing of last year, especially those first 8 games of the year, where the defense was on pace to give up a record amount of yardage, and then suddenly kind of got it together as they started to play worse offenses and backup quarterbacks along the back end of the path. But the offense, boom or bust, to your point on that, and they've been that way. The one thing that I come to on this, and I really would love to know where you stand a little bit, is I think the offense could have done better. And I don't think by any means, just because they put 30 points on the board, that's enough. I do think that it's telling. It still is a point that you get 30 points on the board and you go, okay, defense, we put this on the board, keep them under 30. You're a top 5 offense in the NFL if you're doing that on the normal basis. But the place where I really come to is when we talked about this, knew that they were going to be rough out the gate, like you just said. They're not going to be hitting on all cylinders maybe until week 14, 15, 16, even if they get to that stage. So we knew there was going to be bumps in this road. It wasn't going to be 4 quarters of offensive brilliance. We had to rely upon the defense to carry the water for that. And that's where I stand with it. Whereas I say the offense could have done more, but I put the onus of this upon the defense at the end of the day, because they're the ones who, through this period, we need them to pick up the water. They're the one with all the assets on that defense, all the first round picks, all of the money that's been invested on that side of the football. Two of the three highest paid players are on that side of the football on this team. Where do you stand with that as far as my thought process with that? Am I a little off on that, or should I be giving a little more to the offense?
I think I give a little more to the offense than you do. Because, again, 30 points, 7 of those points were generated from the defense completely. We got the ball at the 6-yard line. Like, the defense basically gave the offense a touchdown. And I'm just kind of looking at it, and it's not so much the number of points you score, although obviously that's important. It's not so much the number of yards. It's how the offense is playing. And other than one drive, which was beautiful, by the way, the drive right before the first half ended, it was the same stuff as last year. That's my main hang up. Now, the main thing with this defense to me, the one thing with this defense that I will be critical of is who we're playing on that defensive line. Dunlap did not play very much, and he's our best pass rusher. Alton Robinson barely played. He may as well have not been active, honestly, and he still actually made the biggest play of the game on defense. And he barely played overall. And Darrell Taylor barely played, and instead we're given 50 to 60 snaps to Benson Mayowa and Rasheem Green, who combined for 0 QB pressures across over 100 snaps combined. So that's my hang up. Why are these guys not getting on the field? Because I do somewhat sympathize with the defense having to go right back out onto the field over and over again at the end of that game. They did actually come up with a couple of stops that should have won the game if the offense was able to pick up a first down. I do have sympathy there because they did force the Titans to kick field goals early in that game. They got a big turnover to give the offense 7 points. There's just a lot to there's just a lot to give the defense credit for, and I just feel like at a certain point in your offense, I'm not even asking you to score. Just get a first down to end the game. So I think I put a little bit more of this on the offense than you do, but I definitely understand the criticism of a defense that has all these resources dumped into it.
Yeah. I mean, it's where I look at, and again, I know the offense for the time of possession, but it does come to, again, why do they have that time of possession, the Titans, in this game? Because they're driving up the field constantly on you, and you're not getting stops throughout this game. You might have gotten them later on in the game, but throughout the course of this game, it was drive after drive after drive. And why I really mostly hammer on the defense with this is because when you look at last year's game and the record amount of passing yards you were giving up to that first 8 games, you were kind of stopping the run, or at least the run wasn't as much outside of the Vikings game, wasn't as much of a problem through those first 8 games. Whereas in this game, you gave up 350 yards passing, which honestly should have been 400 if Titans had about 3 or 4 drops on the game, including one big play on Trey Flowers early in the game on the out and up move. You could have given up 400 yards passing, 190 yards rushing to Derrick Henry. And the one final point in this is just that offensive line is not 2018 Titans, 2019 Titans, even last year Titans. You've got no Taylor Lewan, doesn't play a single snap. You've got a right tackle position that's been a rotation, that Isaiah Wilson first round pick. Of course, he went on, was on a freeway chase in Florida at one point, not playing anymore. Zach Conklin's gone in free agency. The 2 bookend tackle positions are basically backups at that point. Roger Saffold goes down to 2 injuries throughout the game and leaving the field. He's not at 100%. To me, the one thing you're supposed to come into this offseason was a deep defensive line. To your point on this, you rotate guys to keep them fresh. Those guys were gassed by basically the first drive of the third quarter. And that's where I wonder with it. Well, are you leaning too many snaps then to Mayo? And that's more to your point at that point, as far as maybe you're leaning back into it. But that's just the one, and not to harp on it, but that's my one little thing with it that just gets me, is that you guys got to do something. 400 yards passing almost here and 190 yards rushing. Do something. You don't rush the passer all that well through the game. Stop something, especially when this defense is built first and foremost to stop the run. That's how Carroll operates,
Yeah, absolutely. And they did do a pretty good job stopping the run in the first half. Henry did not do very much in the first half at all. And then it just kind of melted as the game went on. So that's kind of where I'm looking to the offense to sustain a drive.
Mhm.
And I can kind of get that. But the thing on the defense that I can't get over, because I can deal with Julio and AJ Brown beating you sometimes because they're really, really good.
Sure.
And that's just going to happen. But and to a certain extent, I can deal with Derrick Henry having a good game because I think Derrick Henry's probably the best running back in the league. I can live with that. But why did we bring back Carlos Dunlap to barely play? Why did we spend all this time talking about how Alton Robinson looks amazing in training camp and the preseason, and we saw all the positive things he did for us last year in limited time, and then he plays, I think, 12 out of 88, or it might have been 18 snaps. It was really low. He forces a fumble, and then he basically goes in the doghouse the rest of the game. What's up with that? I don't understand that. That's the part of the defense that I find to be especially unacceptable, because that shouldn't happen. Over the course of a game, especially when you're playing guys like Julio and AJ, you're going to get beat. You're going to miss tackles. You're gonna have the assignment wrong. You're going to guess wrong. These are things that happen, just like on offense. Quarterbacks miss reads. Quarterbacks miss throws. Receivers do drop passes. These are not robots. This is not Madden. We can't crank their attributes up to 99 in every category, so they're just perfect robots. But
Yeah.
I really don't understand. The thing that should not happen is that rotation on the defensive line. Why is Benson Mayowa, a career journeyman, getting more snaps than Dunlap and Alton Robinson combined? That doesn't make any sense to me.
And again, this is something you're touching on, which is supposed to be what we're told is at the core of this team's philosophy, which is competition is king. What has Alton Robinson not showed within that competition to elevate him above Benson Mayowa? And I say he's shown quite a bit. It's not just these first two games where in these tiny little flashes he's kind of almost dominating. It's the preseason as well. And I don't know what it is that they get their love affairs at sometimes with these certain players that they trot out, like a Tedrick Thompson. Why did they keep trotting out Tedrick Thompson again and again to the horrible results? But they'll find these players that they fall in love with that they just must be burning the field up on the practice field or something. Because Mayo was never going to become something he's any different than what he's been in the past, which best case scenario, you give him a ton of snaps, you're getting like 6 sacks on the season. That's the best case scenario for Benson Mayowa. We don't know what the best case scenario is for Alton Robinson. And I agree with you. You're paying a ton of money to Carlos Dunlap, not a ton, but you're paying a good chunk of change. Get him out on the football field, get your number one pass rusher out there. It maddens me as well, especially when your defense gets wound down and tired out over the course of the game from that stance. All right. Well, I think we turned it over pretty good with this on the Titans one. I do think that this is not necessarily going to be indicative of what we see going forward into the year. We went up against a tough team that just got us on the right. We talked about the stat with Vrabel. He's been 7-0 coming off double-digit losses coming into this game. Now he's 8-0. Guy's a pretty good motivator. But where we can maybe dial this and push this forward to the Vikings a little bit is that I don't know that Mike Zimmer is necessarily that same motivator. And you have in a Vikings team here, as we look at this upcoming matchup, as a team that is 0-2 out the gate. They've got a 5-point differential in their, basically lost by 2 points and 3 points. They did lose to the Bengals at home. They then lost the Cardinals last week. I've watched both of these two games, Brendon. And the thing that's what struck me is looking at Zimmer's recent history, because that's the thing somebody asked me in the chat last night. Does Zimmer have the same thing as Vrabel? And so I went and looked really quick, and he doesn't actually. It's like even off of our loss last year, they had another loss to Atlanta last season after our bad loss at home last year. So he's not necessarily that, Patton-like general that arms it through. But do you see, because they come into this game as a team structured very similar to the Tennessee Titans and how they want to operate, especially offensively, and now going against our defense, do you see them able to attack in the same way? Or do you think that if the offense just sustains itself a little bit, I don't want to peg you in a corner. What do you feel like on that?
Well, I don't get the sense that this Vikings defense is particularly good in terms of their results so far. They gave up, I think, 24 points to the Bengals, and that Cardinals game looked like a college game for a good chunk of it. That looked like one of those Big 12 Oklahoma versus Texas Tech games for a little bit there. Yeah. So I don't think that defense is that good, but we do know that defense might know some things about how to play against Russell Wilson, because last year that was the wake-up call game for me, where I was like, okay, the Schottenheimer thing's kind of figured out. They knew exactly how to play against us, and that's why we struggled so much in that game. Now, we escaped with the win, but coming out of that game, I remember thinking to myself, okay, the let Russ cook party's kind of over. The Vikings figured out exactly what to do against us, and that's not even a very good Vikings team. So you got to come up with something else going forward, and we never really did. So looking at that Titans game last week where I saw us go back to those old bad habits, I am a little concerned about that, but that's also really the most interesting thing about this week. Do we bring something else to the table with our offense if the Vikings just sit in cover 2 all game like they did last year, really just taking away that deep ball? And there's already actually been, I don't want to overstate it, but there was actually kind of a little bit of a war of words, not directly at each other, between Carroll and Wilson, where Carroll the other day said, I wish Wilson had checked it down on 1st and 10 in the overtime instead of going for the shot down the sideline to lock it. And Wilson, I don't know if you saw this, said in his press conference today that he basically said, I don't want to lose that mentality of always trying to attack down the field. So I don't know. I heard that and I was like, oh, okay. I don't know
heard that yet. No, I had not heard that.
Yeah.
That to me is that's discouraging to me, because I have long suspected that this is a ceasefire state between those two individuals, as opposed to a repaired friendship that's going to last the test of time type situation, you know? And that type of comments like that, when they're just like this offseason, you know, Carroll, we need to be more explosive in the run game. And Russell, we need to score 24 points before half. It's like, wait, why are we having our two main leaders on this team going in opposite directions and seemingly the philosophy of things? It gets a little bit, it makes the hair on the back of my neck kind of stand up with that type of comment from both of those two. And frankly, that was a very much memed about play. And folks aren't wrong. Folks aren't wrong. And this is coming from a guy that was given the offensive pass off the last game. But that, frankly, that last pass, that's exactly what people like me have been harping on with Wilson, that he's got to adjust into his football game. And Carroll's, I'm sorry, but he's just not wrong. You can go, well, he's had only 2.5 seconds to throw with the looping blitz coming around on the stunt. Yeah. But if he has in the back of his mind that if I get pressure, get the ball out to my hot read, to the back going out in the flat, or the tight end going out to the other side. If he doesn't have a lane that way, he's got a lane that way. But always the first instinct is scramble out of it, not hit the hot read, scramble out of it. And that's to me a place where it's like, if he's not taking ownership of that, he's not going to fully implement this new offense into his game in the way that he needs to. And that's the part I harped on myself throughout the offseason. And I think it still does remain the most important part for him to take hold of this, is the responsibility of, you've got to make this a part of your game, not just sort of like, okay, I'll do it here, I'll do it there, but you know, which is a little like almost kind of what I'm feeling. Do you feel that too with him on this, with those kind of comments?
I kind of do feel that way too. And honestly, the play in overtime, that didn't bother me nearly as much as there was a 3rd and 3 with 10 minutes left in the game. I don't know if you remember this play.
Remember. Yep, the bomb to DK. Yeah.
And, you know, DK's got one-on-one, and I understand that to a certain extent, Wilson probably has his antenna go up every time he sees DK in single cover, and he's like, oh, I got to get that. And that's not a terrible idea. I kind of get that. But I'm thinking about a few things on that play. It's 3rd and 3. You're up by a touchdown. You're trying to run clock. I don't know if going for a 20-yard, 25-yard play down the field is even that great. I'll take it. It's better than an incomplete pass, but don't I just want to pick up the first down and let clock run? Why do I have to score a touchdown on this play when I'm just going to send my defense, which is already exhausted, right back out onto the field, and the Titans are going to have 10 minutes left? Like they're not going to run out of time at that point. Like it's not even panic mode for them yet. So I'm looking at a play like that and just going, is there some football knowledge that Wilson still hasn't quite caught on to, where he just doesn't totally grasp that? I don't know.
100% agree. 100% agree. And I remember that play exactly like you do. And we've seen it in recent years. Like how many times on 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1s, we've had some success. Last year against the Falcons, we had success on a play like that, where I think 3rd or 4th and 1, and they threw a bomb to DK. But at the same point, the bombs are great and beautiful, but they're also they show those the catch percentage chances now, which are, I don't know what they base that on, Brendon. Do you ever see that where they have a catch, they'll show a catch, and there's like, there was a 3% chance that this catch was going to, what are you guys basing that on? But that's kind of what the bombs are, is that they're like deep threes. You know, you can hit them, but they're not going to hit them usually at a high mark, even with a guy like Wilson who can throw as accurately and as good a deep ball. Whereas the short stuff has a lot more high propensity to be able to be completed. And even with the coverages kind of stacked up short and pressing it, you should still be able to work around that, especially if you get a little inventive offensively, which they didn't do there. But I agree with you. I think it's for him. I've long wondered if it's a part, well, he can't put this into his game because of the height thing, and maybe he's just not comfortable throwing to space and not without the anticipation there and all that. But now I'm starting to wonder if it's a matter of he just really wants it. And I don't know this, so I'm not saying with certainty I understand one way or another. We're going to see this season how it plays out, where he lands. I think you'll agree. It's if he's just that's what he's going to be, and he's not going to implement this stuff into his game one way or another. And that seems like where it's at, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually looked at that play specifically in a video that I posted yesterday morning, and you can see that I think Gerald Everett and Freddie Swain are running a little combination route on the other side of the field.
Yeah.
One of them is definitely going to be open for the first down, little
Yeah.
5-yard play. But by the time they're doing their route combination, Wilson's already let go of the ball. And again, I understand he saw Metcalf has one-on-one, and he's like, oh, I gotta go. Metcalf one-on-one, alert. But in that situation, I don't even need a big play. I don't know if I even want a big play. I want to move the chains and keep this clock moving. Like, let's say you complete it to Metcalf, and let's say, forget about it. Let's say he runs for a touchdown on that play. Okay, great. You're putting your defense right back on the field. I don't know if that's the ideal result anyway. So it's things like that have me frustrated with Wilson. I saw a couple of plays like that against the Titans. So I don't know. I'm careful about looking at a still image and being like, oh, why didn't the quarterback throw here? Why didn't the quarterback throw there? Because this isn't Madden. You can't see the whole play, but
No,
I'm annoyed by the mentality there.
And it's just mainly for me, when you watch these quarterbacks like a Brady or a Rodgers who are really good against the blitz Manning back in the day, it's they know what they're doing with the ball by the time they hit that back foot. And that's where, it's part of this is the upside and downside of Russell. He's so good about scrambling away and such a magician that he wants to fall into that. But you have to almost commit to that back foot, let it go as soon as you land and anticipate the route opening. Like you mentioned another second, throw with some touch and layering to a Gerald Everett breaking to the right. Or if the rusher's in your face and you don't have the vision to the right, come back to Carson as your hot route to the left, which was open. And both of those throws, if he throws with any anticipation, are right there. And I don't want to hit Russell too hard on this because it is just 2 games into a new offensive coordinator, and it's an adjustment. He's doing this on the fly with no preseason. So there still is more time to see, but I think both me and Brendan, I don't want to speak for you on this. This is something we're tracking throughout this year because we know a lot's riding on what's going to go forward with this team beyond this year based on these results, based on what happens with this development. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I've said it before. If this season does not go well, something is going to change next year.
Yeah.
Wilson might go, Carroll and Schneider might go, or maybe they both go. I don't know. But something will change. And honestly, if we don't have a good season, maybe something should change. Maybe that isn't even a bad thing.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I mean, look, it's 7 years at that point, 6-7 years of the same result. That's what we call stilted results. That's what we call the same story playing out over and over. It's time you got to do something new at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that stood out to me too with watching that Viking Cardinal game, I don't know if you noticed the same, and this is where I just to bend it forward to the start of this game, because we started out the first 2 games kind of hammering the run to no success a little bit, and then deep shot city.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at that game against the Cardinals and Vikings, the Cardinals really did commit to really short, intermediate passing game. They did hit deep when the coverages got broken a little bit here and there, but for the most part, moving up the field, it was just that short passing attack. I feel like a big key this week, and I know I said this about the Colts game, but starting out with some short throws to get Russell in rhythm, get him into the mindset of embracing those short passes, which it kind of takes that. Would you see the same in how you'd want to go about this, or do you want to try to get out there and establish that run and just get downhill on them?
Well, that's always a tricky answer because at the end of the day, I want to score points. I don't need it to be by the pass or by the run specifically, but I want to do something well. I don't want to run the ball if it's only going to get 2 yards a carry like it was against the Titans. Some people were saying the problem with the Titans game was we didn't run the ball enough, and I said, well, kind of, but I think the bigger problem is we didn't run the ball effectively at all. We were completely useless on the ground. So I would generally lean towards the passing attack because I think that is the side of the ball on this team that can be the most effective, or excuse me, the side of the offense that can be the most effective. And I just want to see Wilson do this. I just want to see Wilson show that he can do this. I know what Chris Carson can do. He's been doing it for 4 years. Not every game because he gets injured a lot, but he's been doing this for 4 years. I know what he can do, and I'm a little concerned, and it's too early to say this too because this is just his second game as well, but Kyle Fuller might put a low ceiling on this rushing attack to a certain extent because it doesn't seem like he gets any push there. So I'm a little concerned about that. I'm
You said
concerned about
Kyler
him.
Murray?
I'm sorry,
Kyle Fuller.
Kyle Fuller. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like he puts a lower ceiling on our rushing attack. So I am kind of looking at kind of what the Cowboys did against the Buccaneers in that opening game, where they kind of used short passes as an extension of the run because they knew it was suicide to try to run the ball against Vita Vea and I think Sue and Levante David. They knew that was not going to work. So they just decided, okay, short passes all day instead of running the ball.
Yeah. Well, and that's why this game against the Vikings is very mirrored. They're mirrored as a team to what the Titans do as far as they've invested. Their offensive line's better than what the Titans was coming into our stadium last week. It is. As far as run blocking, you can get to them in pass protection, but they get downhill and they get after you. I mean, they move guys off the football. But defensively, it's the very same thing we dealt with the Titans. Titans were a run-centric defense. They're what they're going to be good at this year. I think, Brendan, they're going to be a top 10 run-stuffing team in this league. Whether, we can say, well, is it talent? Is it Vrabel and him being good with the scheme? And who knows? But I do think off the first 2 weeks and how they played the Cardinals and us, that's what they're going to be. And we tried. You're not going to run into the teeth of a defense. And this week you've got Michael Pierce is back for the Vikings. He's a big, stout defensive tackle down there. They've got Sheldon Richardson as the third man in that rotation coming through, also a very good run stuffer. So you are going to go into the teeth of this defense if you're doing that inside zone run stuff. And we don't have Penny this week, so we don't have a guy to really run the outside zone stuff at that point. The Vikings defense, Rashad Breeland's dealing with an injury. Kendricks, Anthony Barr's dealing with an injury, I believe. They've got a couple guys in that secondary out. They're back to Christian Foliar, who DK Metcalf sunned last year, in that game in the Vikings. I mean, he really took him to church a little bit on a couple of those throws, especially at the end of that game. So there's openings in that secondary, but the willingness has got to be there for Wilson to embrace the short stuff. Because if he just tries to go deep on this team, there might be a couple shots in there throughout the game, but there won't be sustained drives, and he won't continue the progression of adapting to this new offensive scheme.
Right. Absolutely. And I have to believe that any smart team is going to sit back in that cover two with their safeties back until Wilson shows that I can consistently hit that short stuff. I can consistently take the check down. Yeah. The Titans game that we just played, all Ryan Tannehill did on the game tying drive was check it down. Literally all he did was just drop back and flip it to his running back on like the last 6 pass attempts. I broke down the whole drive on my channel where that's all he did. And we allowed it to happen, but a lot of defenses are going to allow that to happen because it's better than getting beat deep. Like if you've got your safeties playing back, like a lot of teams do against us because they know the way Wilson likes to play, then they're going to leave stuff like that open. So it's that simple. Ryan Tannehill is not the greatest quarterback ever. He's not even, I don't know if he's a top 10 quarterback in the league, but he can do that. Anybody can do that.
Yeah. I put him by like top 13-ish. I thought top 15 is probably right where I'd put him at. But I agree. They basically were hammering. They were doing it because we couldn't, and we're going to need to talk a little about Trey Flowers here. But essentially, our coverage was going to the cover 3 deep stuff. And then you're still getting beat on your cover 3 deep stuff. That's going to freak Carroll out. Now he draws all of the zones into the deep section of things. And then you give up the underneath stuff, and it's easy, simple peasy at that point, like you said, where it's just like it's this candy from a baby at that point, in my opinion. And then it was rough to watch. But that's where we've got to maybe discuss it a little bit, where we go with this cornerback position. I've been patient on this. My patience runs out in this particular game with Trey Flowers, and not as a gross overreaction, but because of the following 2 reasons. Number one, he was getting beat multiple times with that cover 3. Basically, he's 7 yards off. He's not playing press, right? So he's not going to run step for step with the man. Then he's dropping into the bail technique. Then he's going into a cover 3, and they're still beating him over the top. And they're doing it multiple times over the course of the game. And then he also can't seemingly tackle in this game. He loses all his ability to tackle as a corner, which is supposed to be one of his plus sides as a defender. I've been able to excuse him prior to this because he'd give up the short completions like Shaq. It's like, they'll keep everything clean deep, but they're going to give up stuff mostly in front of him. But this game for me was one that was for a guy in his 4th year in development in a contract year where there's something to prove from you here now. You're getting your great opportunity. I thought, and again, Julio's great. I wanted to trade for him back a couple months ago, so I like the guy. A.J. Brown's legit. I know you're going to give up a couple completions, but to completely get taken to the woodshed and have no fight whatsoever to give, I don't know. I'm out. I'm out on the Trey Flowers experience. I'm ready for a new drummer.
Yeah. I don't know. We might fight on this one because I actually posted a video this morning on my channel. I don't know if you saw it, kind of not really defending Trey Flowers, but really trying to understand why he was getting so much blame for this game. Because I personally don't see it. I do think he got beat a lot, but almost everything he gave up in that game was in the first half when the Titans were just kicking field goals.
Mm-hmm.
So now Trey Flowers is not really good. He's not. We can clearly see that. But I'm much more apt to look at a pass rush that did not hold up their end of the bargain. I actually went and counted earlier today. They got 8 quarterback pressures on Tannehill, who dropped back to pass probably close to 50 times. 8 QB pressures with Taylor Lewan out and Roger Saffold playing, I think, less than half the game. Yes. And I think Ben Jones might have gotten hurt at the end, too. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's a big component of the way they play defense too. We can get into this a little bit. Like they want to stop the run first. Sorry to interrupt you on that, but they stop the run first and foremost. That's what they want to do. So they are going to have a philosophy of first stop the run, then get to the quarterback a little bit. Now the rotations would have helped. Getting somebody else better there would have helped. Alton Robinson would have helped. Darrell Taylor would have helped in that pass rush side of things. So I agree with you there. But that's the one thing about it. You play a big time rusher like this. Carroll's going to tell them, first contain your gap. First, make sure it's not a running play. Then you can rush. And I've always stated that that's a very tough way of and quite frankly on the Seahawks, Brendon Nelson, I've got an inside source on this one. So a player that I've actually talked to about this situation as far as getting to it. They play that run first on their defensive linemen. They have them do it first. Then and when talking to the player, they said that's very unusual. Most teams now are more pass centric and they're letting you hunt, letting you get after the quarterback. This ideology is a little bit stilted and old in that respect. And so that's where I wonder with it. The one thing with Trey is that he gave up the yards, but there was also the first catch in the game, which could have gone for another 65-yarder on the A.J. Brown out and up move. And it's just the fact that when you're a corner in this scheme, one of the reasons I've said that it's not in our points to go out there and spend a lot of money on a cornerback is because you don't require the cornerbacks to do a whole lot in this particular scheme. You really don't. Keep it clean deep is basically the ideology of a Seattle Seahawks cornerback. So when they get beat deep, you can anything underneath you keep up. That's okay. As bad as a 15-yard post route or a 10-yard dig is, but when you get beat deep multiple times on big chunk plays, that is the ultimate worst thing you can do in this defense as far as I look at it when you're playing cornerback because you're asked to do such simplified stuff.
Yeah, and I agree. He did give up that one shot play against the Titans, the 51-yarder to Julio. That was bad, I will admit. I looked at the play a few times. I don't think Trey Flowers was in terrible coverage or anything. I think, it was a great throw, honestly. He's right there. But I would like to see Sidney Jones out there because I think Sidney Jones has potential. I think he has talent. I think he might be a good fit for this scheme, and he might be more of a playmaker than Trey Flowers is. But I didn't totally understand why people were jumping on Trey Flowers like he was the problem against the Titans, like he's why we lost. That's kind of what I was kind of going against because I didn't see it that way. By my count, Trey Flowers did not allow a single reception in that game in the last 30-plus minutes. He allowed one catch in the second half, and it was with like 3 minutes elapsed in the second half. So I was just having a hard time putting a lot of that game on him. Now, the drops are definitely a thing. I think that we can safely say that he's not good and that we could try to do something else. But at the same time, I just see this anger at a guy like him, and I wish it was directed at the coaching staff in the front office that has had him for 4 years and can't seem to find anybody better to the point where he keeps going out there. Like, how did we go into this offseason knowing how bad our corner position was about to be, and then Trey Flowers is still the guy we put out there starting at the end of the day? That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So Trey Flowers was a 5th-round pick who played safety in college. He converted positions. Like, he's honestly doing good for a guy like that. Most guys who are 5th-round picks who switch position when they come to the NFL are going to be really bad. So I don't know. Maybe it's just a matter of, it being a personal thing against Trey Flowers versus it being a just, a business decision kind of thing. I don't know, but I don't totally understand the Trey Flowers stuff. I have to admit.
Well, and I think let me elaborate a little further too. So you've got the 60-yard run by Henry that goes off of the weak side. And on that play, it's obviously not a good play by multiple people there. You can point to Jamal, you can point to Rasheem Green, but you also can point to Trey Flowers, who comes down. And again, this is supposed to be a part of his game. That's the plus side of his game. You lose a little bit in coverage, but you gain a better tackler at the cornerback position than you normally have. He comes down and throws a weak ass effort at Henry's feet. And Henry easily blocks gets out in space and gets going. And this was before Henry was up to full speed. He's coming up to the line of scrimmage, basically meeting him at the line of scrimmage, and whiffs on it. I think, as well, as I've not been a hater of Trey Flowers, I've actually been a big apologist of Trey Flowers throughout his time here, in saying, folks, trust the process of his development. Like you said, came out as a safety. You're not going to expect a guy like that to be right there and ready to go at that point. But now when you get to year 4, and you've been in a professional NFL facility for 4 years, off season and all that, to train under Carroll, in a scheme that does not ask a cornerback to be sticky in coverage, play a man on man, stay in that back hip pocket. We don't ask you to do it. That's the hardest thing to do as a cornerback. That's the hardest thing. Playing zone and covering up deep should be pretty simple. And to give up those plays multiple times in a game, or have that, the one drop, he makes that catch. DJ Brown on that catch, which is wide open, that's another 45 yards right there, and it's just, that's the part where I get a little bit, normally I'm like, hey, it's okay with Trey, but on this respect, with this particular game, you needed to keep it clean over the top. And when you saw later in that game, when they're hitting that underneath stuff to those backs, that's a symptom of them playing deeper in their coverage to protect who? Probably Trey. So they can bring an extra safety back. And I don't have the all 22 tape, so I can't see for sure on this, Brendon. I'm guessing. But my theory on this is that if I saw the 22 tape, you saw the safeties staying right there and helping Trey out every way. And then the linebackers having to get in a deeper zone. And then you got this wide open space underneath that they can hit the running backs at that point. So I felt like it had a kind of a cascading domino effect on this particular game. His, where he starts out bad, they've got to adjust. He doesn't give up as many completions because they've adjusted and given him help. It's kind of what I'm thinking on it.
Yeah, that's certainly possible. That's something that's, a domino effect that's a little hard to track. That may very well be the case. It wouldn't be surprising. Again, Trey Flowers is clearly not good, but I'm not convinced that anybody we can replace him with is going to be that much better. I do want to see Sidney Jones, because he clearly has talent. Yeah. He clearly has talent. He was drafted in the second round for a reason. He was honestly decent last year on Jacksonville, which had probably the worst pass rush in the league. I'm just far more irritated at the lack of pass rush, because those are the guys we're paying. Those are the guys with talent. Those are the guys with high draft pedigrees. Those are the guys we're giving big money to. And not only did you not get a pass rush, you didn't even really play your best guys, by my estimation.
I agree with you there 100%. So I'm fully on greens. And I do share, it's not one or the other with Trey Flowers, where I don't hold the coaching staff accountable as far as this cornerback situation. You needed to do better. I don't know where Trey Flowers is in the development game in the background, if they were seeing him flash all over the field and they're like, he's ready to take that step. But if he wasn't showing that, then you needed to go harder than Witherspoon this offseason, especially when you bailed off of him so quickly, unless they just think they've got Sherman in the back pocket for some point in time this year and they can bring that card out whenever they want. Do you make a trade at this point with a guy with like Patriots and look at week 7 getting out with Gilmore on a deal there?
I'm not a big fan of that. As far as I know, Gilmore's a man corner and we only play zone, and I don't think that's going to change. So I'm not a big fan of that. It seems like the Xavier Howard situation's been pretty resolved. It seems like he's pretty happy in Miami right now. The only guy that I'm intrigued by is Henderson down in Jacksonville, and it's up in the air whether or not the Jacksonville Jaguars would trade him right now. So yeah, that's the only guy who caught my eye, who showed up on the trade block at any point this offseason. Now that's a guy I could get behind, but I think the die is cast for the most part. The die is kind of cast, and you got to make it work with what you have. And if it doesn't work, well, you had the whole offseason, so what the heck were you doing this offseason?
Well, and I am intrigued by Jones. We're going back and watching his tape at University of Washington when he got traded again, and just noticing all of this stuff he does in zone. He's got great eyes on the quarterback, where he can feel the man in zone and still keep his eyes on the QB, which leads to a lot more interceptions at that point, as opposed to you're having to look at the man and stay in zone with him, and you don't get your head turned around, as we've seen on a few cornerbacks here over our time period here. So, I mean, I can't imagine he's much worse. Like you said, he's gotten better every single year of his career, too, coming off that Achilles injury. And that your point about the Jacksonville Jaguars not having a good pass rush, that's a big point to take into account with Sidney last year and how he played. Number 1 corner on that team with no pass rush. Clavion Chasen wasn't ready to go. You had Josh Allen, I think is the guy's name down there, their run pass rusher. That's it. That's all they had.
Yeah, I looked this up. I think they had 19 sacks in 16 games last year. It might have been 18.
That's not helping your cornerbacks out. That's that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not getting them. That's not getting them through. Well, okay, so I'm in the point of thinking you're kind of same point. You don't want to see him hammer in the run here with the Vikings. You want to see him kind of go. Do you want to see? Would you like to see short passing and that to start out, or just try the run then go to short passing if it quickly doesn't work?
I'm inclined to believe that I always have liked the strategy of passing the ball to open up the run. I know in the old days it was always you run the ball to open up the pass. I like passing the ball to open up the run personally. That's always kind of my default philosophy. Now, from game to game, that may change depending on what the other team is doing, but I've always kind of liked that philosophy as in a general sense.
Yeah.
And I want to attack the weakness of the defense, and I think it's very clear that this Vikings team has some strength in that run defense, but you can pass on them. Yeah. Two teams have now had a lot of success passing the ball on the Vikings secondary, so I want to attack that.
Yeah. I just think it's the straightforward way to do it, and they've come out with that. I still with you. Holmgren kind of taught me on this as much as anything as a fan, and watching him implement his offenses, because as good as Sean Alexander was, it was usually on the back of them coming out. They'd come out the game in that first drive, and they'd have a 9-play drive, and they'd throw 8 times. And he would, to your point on that, throw the pass to open up the run. And it does work that way. It's you can see how it does work that way, as the defense is going to favor towards running on early downs early in the game. So there's that opening, much like throwing on first down versus running on first down, which we were doing in this game again. Constant runs on first down, it seemed like at times when we were running it, as opposed to catching them off guard in the running game. Don't, be a little more sleight of hand with it just a little bit. And when you don't, it's not to say don't give Carson a lot of carry, give him a lot of carry, get Alex Collins in there. By the way, 1 carry for 25 yards, and then we're not going to give him another touch. Alden Robinson, Alex Collins. I don't know what these guys, it must have pissed off Carroll or something.
Yeah. I mean, coaches in the NFL are stubborn, and Pete Carroll is definitely stubborn. We know this but honestly, that's not even totally a knock against Carroll specifically. Most NFL coaches are stubborn. We see this all the time. We've seen it for decades now. I'm not surprised when a coach decides to, he gets it in his head that this guy's better than that guy, and it's going to take a lot of evidence for them to start to believe otherwise.
Yeah.
Now, I think Carroll has shown some improvement in that area lately, like the DJ Reed thing. DJ Reed was antithetical to everything he ever wanted from an outside cornerback. He plays him for a couple games. He plays well, and he's like, oh, okay, I guess this is the thing now.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could say that this is a trend for coaching going forward, is that what made the old coaching guard was a little of, I'm going to do it my way, and I trust it with the devout spirit of, a zealot, versus now it's more about an ability to be adaptable, and be able to move around a little bit more in how you have your philosophy set and your identity set. That's a little bit better, because that's, there's something to be said for that. Would you think, that's maybe a trend where we're going with these new coaches?
It seems to me, actually, I just remembered something. I read a story a long time ago. It was about the Steelers in the 1950s. So this was way back when. Mm-hmm. And this was back when the Steelers were a really bad team. They were practically a bag on their head team. They had a head coach who every game, the first offensive play of the game, no matter what, he would run a fullback dive. And it got to the point where other defenses would literally put 11 guys in the box because they knew he was going to do it, and he would still do it. So one day the owner goes down and is like, hey, why do we do this? What if you pass the ball out of that formation? Wouldn't you score an easy touchdown? So he's like, so the owner says, okay, next game, first play, I want you to fake the fullback dive and throw it deep. And they do, and they score a touchdown, except one of the offensive linemen lined up illegally. And later, the coach said that he told the offensive lineman to line up illegally intentionally because he didn't want the owner to think he knew better than him.
Oh, my God.
So that's how stubborn some of these guys are. And I think Pete kind of comes from that. I think Pete's been around in football for, 4 decades now. He has a lot in common with that mentality of like, I feel like this is the best way to do things no matter what.
It's an apropos metaphor for it, because that's exactly what he does as the equivalent now in a lot of respects. It's a modernized, it's 50 years later, but it's the modernized version of what you just described. In a lot of ways, he goes about his practices with managing a football game. And it just, the returns are getting diminishing by leaning into that the more he does. And yet you see, to your point on that, the times where he goes outside of himself. DJ Reed. I mean, DJ Reed's a guy that there was not any time, anyway, DJ Reed had a chance to get on this roster as an outside corner in the last 5 to 6 years. But because Schneider went to bat for him, Schneider said, you got something here. And it was a cornerback needy situation with Seattle. He went, well, wow, I listened to Sean and I got a player here. Yeah, do some more of that. Go outside I only have this strict, this is how I do it and this is where I'm going to do it. And you're going to get some more success of it. I think Waldron's a little bit like that. Waldron's not an offensive coordinator hire he'd want to make in the past. Up-tempo offense, short passing game. No way. But he's starting to make, and the more Carroll does that, it's going to be the better for him. The more he implements different things outside of this hard, dodgy, crotchety attitude with it's going to be this way or the highway, the better for him, in my opinion. The better, Really quick, we got a donation here. Nolan R. Vance, thank you for your $5 donation, my guy. He says, Flowers only gave up one completion in the second half, ? How many balls were thrown in his direction? A lot of check downs down in the...
I assume he means second half.
Second half, yeah. A lot of check downs in the second half. Yeah, and I think it's a little bit, and thank you for the $5 donation, Nolan R. Vance. I mean, it's Brennan's not wrong in the respect of he didn't necessarily give up a ton of completions with it. You can't say, well, he got hit for 5 for 175. He had a bad day. He did have a bad day. And I do think a lot of those checkdowns came from him. But again, we can't say for certain because I don't see the all-22 tape. I need to see where those safeties were to know for sure. And me guessing is just out of school.
I do actually have the numbers on that. I looked them up because I had to do a video about it earlier today. In that game, Trey Flowers was targeted 7 times for 4 completions and 102 yards. Okay. And I actually went back through the reel and found all 4 completions. 3 of them were in the first half, and 1 of them was on that first drive of the second half. So, yeah, he didn't really give up anything in that second half. Now, maybe you can make an argument that it was because we started helping him, which created holes in other areas. We'll never know if that's for sure the case because we don't have access to the all-22, but it's possible.
Yeah. So we can't say one way or another. And that's where I'd land on. It's like, it may not. It may have been that maybe he cleaned stuff up. Maybe they said, look, stay on top. And the Titans kept trying to run a guy on top and the safeties were doing something else. And you never know until the all-22 only tells because the television copy just doesn't let you see what those safeties are doing at all, really, unless they're coming up to buzz the line of scrimmage. All right, defensively, there's no question here on this game in Minnesota. We got to rush the passer here, and you've got to get to me. When I look at Kirk Cousins, I see a guy that you got to move off of his spot. You let him sit down, you let him set. He gets to put his mechanism in place. He can throw a pretty good ball. He's got some arm strength. Get him moving, throw it off platform. Got a guy on his heels. He's going to get a little more dodgier to me a little bit. What do you think about that as far as how we should attack defensively here?
Yeah, I think that's true for almost every game. You always would rather get pressure than not get pressure. But against a quarterback like a Kirk Cousins, who is not going to break contain and scramble for 30 yards, he's not that kind of quarterback. Yeah, absolutely. You want to push him off his spot. You want to get pressure. You can definitely force him into turnovers. I think, actually played relatively clean football lately, though. He's actually kind of not that anybody's really noticed. No. He's been putting up really impressive numbers lately. It hasn't resulted in amazing things for the Vikings yet, but he is performing. And I don't know if you saw this, but Carroll had a comment yesterday. They asked him about Alton Robinson's snaps, and he said, yeah, I'm a big advocate for him getting on the field. And that really confused me because I'm like, you're the head coach, right?
I pound my head, like the quotes coming out yesterday, like the Lockett quote coming out of, well, we just fell in love with that deep ball again. And Carroll saying something like that. Well, we just got to get Alton. I'm mad about it too. You're mad about it too. You're running this ship. What do you mean you're mad about it? You're the guy to tell, why isn't this guy getting more snaps? Why isn't the leading up to the week? When you're in your inner meetings, like, okay, how are we going to divvy up these snaps? You're going, well, we'll give Benson Mayowa 70% and we'll go ahead and hand Alton Robinson 7%. There's position coaches, there's defensive coordinators, there's head coach there. Any one of them could have the light bulb go, hey, the guy that caused the sack fumble in the first half, the only guy on defense that's actually done jack diddly squat in this game, maybe we go back and use him again. Maybe that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. But the good news about that comment is that it seems to indicate that he's actually going to play him more in this game. So that encourages me. Also, obviously hoping to see more Dunlap because that one really doesn't make sense to me. I understand that Pete Carroll can be stubborn about things, but this is a very weird thing for him to be stubborn on when Carlos Dunlap came in last year and single-handedly saved your defense almost.
Yeah.
Like, why are you stubborn about giving him playing time? I can understand Alton to a certain extent because he's young. It's still dumb, but I understand why he might think that, but I don't understand giving Dunlap limited snaps. So I do expect those guys to I do expect the right guys to get playing time in this game. And I don't know if you saw, but Dalvin Cook did not practice again today. So we don't know if we're going to get him this week or not. It seems possible we won't. Yeah. So there should be no excuse of like, oh, we wanted to play certain types of players to stop the run. No, that should not be a thing this week.
Yeah, if Alexander Manis is in the game and he's toting that rock, you do not need to be, let's get our run-centric guys out there. You should be getting your guys who are going to rush after the passer. And Dunlap's a good plus run defender anyway. I don't know why with him, he can stop the run well enough. He's a big guy, stout at the point of attack. He can handle the strong side formation stuff, a set in the edge. So I'm with you. I think you've got to roll him out there. I know he's an older player and they're probably trying to manage his snaps and keep him fresh throughout the course of the season. But when you see your defense going through the same early season thing that we saw last year, and he's sitting on that bench, you've got to at that point hit the ripcord and go get the guy out there that fixed this last year. Let's see if he can fix it in this particular game and get going. I hope with you, we do see that though. I do.
Yeah, and I understand that you're worried about his snaps and you want to keep him fresh for the end of the season, but meanwhile, Kerry Hyder is going to wear himself out. He's on pace to play over 1,000 snaps this year. So is Rasheem Green, and I think Benson Mayo is not far behind either. So I don't see how you're coming out ahead if you wear out everyone else on the defensive line except for Dunlap by the end of the season. I don't see how that's like to your advantage.
I agree. And but the part is you're supposed to have the depth here to handle it with these young bups able to come in there when they need to. So it's time to trust them, time to trust a Darrell Taylor, time to trust an Alton Robinson. I get that they've got Rasheem Green, a lot of trust there, but again, Rasheem in this game he was completely absent. And on that one Henry run, he got blown out of his gap. He's there to set that edge on that run. And he got pushed all the way to where the center started on that particular run. I mean, that was just unacceptable to get that cleaned out of the gap at that point in time in the game when he did. Time for some other stuff, time for some other guys. Okay. Well, is there any other, so where do you see this game going? I know you don't like predictions. I know it's not your thing on it. So I know it's not your favorite, but maybe just in general, outside of a prediction, where do you see this game going from a stylistic standpoint? Maybe where is it not necessarily bottom line score, but just how it plays kind of out?
I have to confess that I'm a little concerned that we are going to see a lot of long drives for the Vikings that maybe don't end in touchdowns. Maybe they end in field goals like they did against the Titans. But one issue that I am seeing with this team right now is our offense punting the ball so much and hitting so many big plays combined with our defense in that bend, don't break philosophy. It's kind of combining to create a lot of plays on defense. Yeah. We've had almost 170 snaps on defense through 2 games. I don't think that's going to change yet. I think these teams have kind of realized that if they play a relatively safe offense and just try to keep drives going for 10 plus plays, they can do that. So I do expect a game where you're going to see a lot of long Vikings drives. And that being said, I do feel pretty good about this game. It's in a dome, so I think that our offense, which is still good, I know that we're like second in the league in punts, and I know there are definitely some issues, but it's still overall a pretty good offense. I do expect this offense to be able to hit those big plays if they need to, because until I see it happening consistently, I'm going to assume that Wilson is sometimes just going to go back to that all or nothing mentality. Yeah. But against this Vikings defense, they're not a great defense. Maybe they can be great at that one particular thing, but I think he can get enough plays down the field to where you're able to put up some points on what should be a pretty bad defense. So game flow is sometimes hard to guess, but I would say that I do think we're going to win this game. I feel a little bit better about it than a lot of people, it seems like. I don't think the Vikings are bad, but I'm not convinced that they're good. I'm going to say Seahawks win like 27-20 or something like that.
I had 30-27. So again, we're pretty close on just like our predictions here, probably pretty close on where we're at as far as that goes. I do see the defense giving up a little bit, but if Dalvin Cook doesn't start, to your point, because he did go in and out of that game in the Cardinals, it seemed like there was a back thing and then it was an ankle thing at the end. So he's got a kind of a multitude of issues he's kind of working through, and it's a drop off to Madison. I know he gashed us for 100 yards last year, but that was a different, to me, defensive line than what we have right now. That would lower my score down if he's not playing. I would give us maybe a 7-point win on that if there's no Dalvin Cook. I do see it as probably a close game because the offense is finding itself. Like you said, though, I agree. You're probably looking at still the deep shot element coming in. If Seattle can just for a portion of this game bring in a little more of the short passing, even if it's to fail here and there, but just to bring along the progress of it, it's not only going to be good for them and beneficial in this game, but to me moving forward as well, because it will help that development rather than them stagnating it by not being willing to they're just falling into the old habits of things every time, and so it'll be interesting. I think what you're going to see the Vikings do on that back end with those safeties, I agree with you. You're going to get a lot of cover too, but I do think as well you're going to see a lot of rolled up coverages to DK if they've got Dantzler out there who's going to be their back at that point, and they got the other cornerback that's injured on the other side. You can see Tyler have another big game in this game where they're only able to double one. The other safety's kind of trying to take away maybe some more of the underneath stuff, and he might get some more opportunities like he's had in these first 2 weeks because of it.
Right, and eventually, because Lockett has played incredible through 2 weeks. It's I think the best start any receiver's had in franchise history. He's doing amazing stuff right now. Eventually teams are going to realize that they got to do something about that. And I hope it happens soon, because we didn't talk about this at all, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because I don't think it's a big thing yet. But it seems like Metcalf is starting to feel the pressure of that contract year on him, and he wants to put up those numbers. So I hope that teams start to roll more coverages towards Lockett, because I'm worried about that going in a bad way if teams keep taking Metcalf out of the game.
I agree.
I don't know about you.
I do 100% agree with you. I've been a long time guy because I get people coming on my channel. I don't know about you, but the second that he's done anything, be it last year's playoff game with the Rams or whatnot, it's, oh, he's a diva. He's a diva. He's a diva. I've been like, give it a little bit of an inch. Or somebody asked me last night, they said, was he the Terrell Owens of the new era? And I go, no, Terrell Owens did shenanigans and stuff that had nothing to do with it, caught in the heat of the moment. It's him pulling out a Sharpie and signing a football after he scored a touchdown, just stupid stuff like that. DK is not in that realm of things, but last week was disconcerting, and the personal fouls and where you can see him kind of just playing a little wild. And it's like, man, you're into year 3 now. I know you're still a young guy. The contract year is there, but you got to clean this stuff up. You can't hurt your team in the name of just being a bully out there. That's not going to work for this team, especially if you're not making catches. He's going to get his chances, though, to your point. Teams are going to roll back over to Lockett at one point or another when Lockett's gashing teams like they are. You really can't double team 2 receivers on the outside, schematically from a defense. If you do that, you can do it. But theoretically, now you're going to have tight end seam routes going up all day long. There's a lot of problems that should open up holes in the defense at that point if they do that. I don't think any team's going to be willing. I think they'll more often than not probably just try to flip who gets doubled on what individual given play. But I think, and again, this is the part where I hate not having the all 22. I'd love to see where DK's been at this year as far as his double coverage. How many times has he had that bracketed defender fall and just lean in on him, like for instance, the Lockett touchdown with the Colts, where Lockett runs that out and gets the safety to bite out and then goes up for the 69-yarder. And on that play, it was technically looked like cover 2. They showed a little bit of all overhead copy because the safety comes down and he buries in on DK Metcalf there. So it left the other safety single high at that point. So I would be interested to find out where he's at and if that slides away, and hopefully he can take advantage. But yeah, I think he is dealing with a little bit of pressure on that side of things. 100% agree with you there. If you feel a little bit like, a little bit of tension here.
Yeah. And, one last thing I want to say before we wrap up on this Vikings game is I understand that we spend all this time this offseason talking about how, the offense is going to take time, and we need the defense to carry water for this offense. And that's still true. But one thing I do want to say, I'm looking at some of these other teams in the NFL. Like, did you watch the Thursday night game last week? Giants versus Washington?
A tiny bit of it. And I didn't dive too far in. Giants are rough.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I'm watching that game, and I'm seeing 2 teams that were supposed to have really good defenses this year. Washington in particular was supposed to have maybe the best defense in the league. Mm-hmm. And they got destroyed by a Giants offense that is not good, with Daniel Jones and a bunch of receivers that Jason Garrett doesn't know how to use, and a pretty bad offensive line and no tight ends. And Saquon's basically running with 3, like he's got 3 legs or something like that. That's a bad offense. And then I'm seeing that same Giants defense get destroyed by Taylor Heineke. And the only good player on that Washington offense really are good players are Terry McLaurin and Antonio Gibson. So I'm looking at that. I'm also, Scherf. Okay, Scherf's a good one too. But I think that kind of just goes to show you that, our defense disappointed us against the Titans. But in this modern NFL, most defenses are going to let you down if they give you an opportunity. I remember talking about this with my friends a couple years ago. In the modern NFL, if you give even a bad offense a chance to go win a game at the end, they're probably going to do it because offense is so easy now. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to go down the field when you have an extra down. It's so easy to go and kick a game-winning field goal with 2 minutes left. Yeah. Like Taylor Heineke drove down for a game-winning drive twice in that game, and Daniel Jones drove for, I think, one game-winning drive of his own in that game against two defenses that were supposed to be elite. So I'm looking at it and I'm still going, I understand that Shane Waldron is new. I understand that there's a learning curve here for him and his players. Yeah. But you need something. You do need something. We needed something at the end of that Titans game. We needed a first down. We got one first down in our last 4 drives, and it was a meaningless first down because it came with 2 seconds left in the game, and we were playing a really bad defense. That level of incompetency, I don't accept.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's funny as you're saying that. You're almost kind of advocating a little bit in the back of mind from what you're saying too, is going for more of the attacking, risk it, no biscuit type defense, right? Being that you sort of built within your structure, your defense to say, we know in the modern offense, you're going to score. We're not going to let you just tire our defense out. We're going to take chances and risks, and you might bang us over the top on a big play, but we're going to also have our own big plays that we're bringing to bear on you at that point. I know you didn't mean that towards the defense as much. You were talking about the offensive side of the ball and that they should have brought more. I agree with you on that 100%. The offense should have done more. That ending drive when Russell has an opportunity there and he comes out and there's just nothing done at all. You've got they didn't even put up a fight in that moment of overtime. It felt like on that last drive. That's unacceptable in that moment. You should, as an offense, Russell Wilson, Hall of Famer's prime, DK Tyler, an offensive line that's doing fairly okay in pass protection throughout the game. The Titans call up, they got to do better. They do. But that's one of those things when you talk about that just draws to my mind a little bit of, that's one more of when we move forward on this, if we ever go to a new defense, I'd be more in favor of going to that type of defense. I think that's the defense of the new era, the one that is going to be hard. You don't know what's coming from what angle, from where, and it's attacking, and it's not necessarily super. It's going to maybe try to be a little protective deep, but it's not going to make it the end all be all, I guess, as opposed to where it is right now.
Right. And sometimes it's situational. Sometimes you do want to give up short stuff, but you don't want to give up the short stuff with 3 minutes left when you're up 1 touchdown and the Titans are 54 yards away from tying the game. Yeah. You don't want to go to that because you're giving them a free touchdown. I did a video earlier this week breaking down just the last 10 plays on that drive where all they did was either hand it off or Tannehill checked it down to a running back. And on every check down that I saw, there was no defender within 5 yards of the running back. So you're giving it to him. Yeah. So you're giving it to him. You're basically saying, you can have this. We're going to give this to you for free. Yeah. And that's it. We ran that drive there were 30 seconds left and the Titans had no timeouts, but there were 3 minutes left and the Titans had all 3 of their timeouts. So not only are you giving them basically a free touchdown, you're also letting them completely dictate the clock. You're letting them have complete control of the clock. Yeah. So it's a situational thing. That situation called for something else. But I can understand that there is some benefit to the bend don't break defense. And for a good chunk of that Titans game, it was actually working okay. We held the Titans to 9 points in the first half.
And it worked in the Colts game, in the first game too. It can still work. Carroll's defense is not completely there's no way that this doesn't work. It's very built upon a pass rush, which we had week 1. Then we didn't have week 2. You need a pass rush from the front four to work, so you could drop in coverage. You'll deal with a guy like Cousins this week. When you watch the Cardinals, they were dropping a lot of guys into coverage. They'd rush with their front four, having Watt and Chandler Jones. You've got to accomplish that with this defense for it to work. The thing that I like with the attacking defense is the way it manufactures for players, manufactures pressures, manufactures an ability. We're not just relying on just be super talented and better than that guy across from you. Sometimes it's a little bit now of implementing a little more of the chess match of coaches into the game, which I think I don't want a coach running whole hog and diagramming everything and the players not being able to have a little bit of freedom in what they're doing. But we've gone the other direction with it, my point, where it's super simplified. It's made to be real easy. And the theory goes, well, they'll all be able to play downhill. They'll be able to now not have to think because our scheme's so simple. Yeah, but then the other offense knows it's not simple. It's simple as well, right? There's sort of a counter to that.
Right. I remember like 8 years ago, the Cowboys, they had Rod Marinelli as their defensive coordinator, and that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
They ran a super simple defense, and on the games where they got a bunch of turnovers, they were great. But if they couldn't get turnovers because they were playing a smart offense, there was nothing they could do.
Yeah.
It was like they were giving up like 600 yards a game because every play everyone's in the exact same spot. And any decent offense was just, okay, we're just not going to do stupid stuff to turn it over. And what are you going to do? And the answer is nothing. I think they had the worst defense in franchise history that year. Our defense is starting to turn into that.
Yeah. And analytics are telling these offenses, they're saying, yeah, we know you guys want to get the chunk plays. This particular defense you're playing off the 10 years of data we have and looking at this defense is going to give you 7-yard hitches, drag routes, curl routes, a variety of these different easy completions. All you need to do is one little thing, tiny little thing. Commit to it through the whole game. Don't get to the point where you start taking the cheese and want to go hit it deep. Just hit those little spots, hit those little places. And then when we deal with those offense, like Phillip Rivers did to us back in that Chargers game, I was in person watching that game. We talked a little about that before, just how startling that was. Man, he's just hitting running backs. It was like the fourth quarter where they're hitting Derrick Henry and the running backs underneath in this game, but like through the whole 4 quarters of the game. And you're going, wow, if you just stay patient on this defense, even the Legion of Boom type defense, the structure still allows them to beat you. And I think the analytic people are really in those coaches' ears now going, hey, yeah, we know you want to try to be, we know your mentality is like, well, we've been throwing short all game. We got to hit it now deep. We got to at least take a strike now deep. We got to take a shot now, right? No, just keep attacking underneath. Keep it short. Keep it simple. And that's where I think they're starting to adjust to the Carroll's defense like that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've said it before about Carroll, and sometimes he proves me wrong in minor ways, but he's been thinking this is the way to do things for 4 decades. I don't think he's going to change his mind now for anything. So
what about this?
I don't know.
What about this? I got an idea for you, okay? And this still is on my Gilmore. I know you're anti-Gilmore here, but think of it like this. What if you brought in Gilmore? You played split half field looks. Gilmore's running man coverage one side. You have zone going the other side, right? With the maybe the single high safety leaning to that other side also. And then you go to more of the attacking bare front defense, bringing now Jamal Adams a little more often down in that line of scrimmage zone and coming a little bit more on pressure fronts as a midseason adjustment if this continues to go in this direction of a defense.
Well, yeah, if it continues to get as bad as it was at points against the Titans, then I'm pretty much open to whatever. I mean, at a certain point, you have to do something different. Why not do that? Yeah. But I just don't know if I see it happening. And I will grant you that this style of defense, this bend, don't break stuff, this cover 3 stuff is good enough for us to win more than we lose. But I don't know if it's good enough for us to get to where we want to go. Maybe that just traps you in purgatory. Maybe that's not even a good thing. I don't know.
You're never good, never quite bad. Well, we'll wrap it up here. We are an hour plus in. Thank you for hanging in here with me on that, Brendan. The one last question I just have for you is, we are now about 3 weeks outside of the deadline. I know I'm doing a little bit of masturbation here, a little hot stove league talk, but we are sitting on $13 million of cap space. We could convert Russell's base to bonus at any given time if we wanted. Is there a guy you've got a little bit of starry eyes for potentially for looking as an addition to this roster?
Oh, they're definitely. And if we don't use that cap space, then I'm really confused as to what the plan is. If we do not use that cap space, then I don't understand what the plan was this year. Like, honestly, if you weren't going to go all in, then you should have just gone all out and maybe really just blown it up. That's kind of how I look at things. But as for specific players, there are the usual suspects. If the Eagles lose their next few games, you call them up about Jason Kelce, maybe Fletcher Cox, see how they feel about that. It's hard to know who's going to be bad enough to want to fire sale at the trade deadline right now. We have a lot of teams at 1-on-1. We have a lot of teams that could go either way at this point. I still don't think the Eagles are any good, but they are 1-1, so I'm sure they're not thinking fire sale right now. Like Jacksonville looks like they might be the worst team in the league this year. If they continue to lose, maybe they'll change their mind about CJ Henderson, because they did just sign Shaq and draft Tyson Campbell. I think it's possible. So there are guys like that. There are a ton of guys. In fact, on my channel at some point in the next few weeks, I'm probably going to do a deep dive into every really bad team's roster to see who would be some sensible trade candidates. I did this last year. It went really well. And I think I'm going to do it again this year, because there are a ton of guys you could get, guys that you don't even know exist right now, but could still help your team.
100%. I think to your point on that, the list is going to get clearer within the couple weeks period as those contenders fall away. Eagles remain the team I'm looking at, because you look at their schedule coming up, it's pretty tough. They could really lose the next 5-6 games quite easily, and be in that place, which would be beautiful for us, because if not for Kelsey, I do not know. Lindor, maybe with the Jacksonville Jaguars. There is not
a lot of people on my channel are saying Frank Ragnow from the Lions, but I don't think the Lions would trade him, even if they start 0-6.
That's like a dream. That to me, that's a dream. I'd love it. Look, I'm board. You want to put me on the Frank Ragnow train? That would be a dream scenario. I just can't believe that the Lions, wanting to tear kneecaps off and bite him and chew him, are going to move off from a kneecap chewing, biting mofo. You know what I mean? That's the part where I would wonder on that, is they just signed him to a contract. They're going to eat the dead money to move off from him. And then what are you throwing at them at that point? You're going to have to give them a big pick at that point to overcome that dead money hit. But I had somebody else propose that to me too. And I said, yeah, it sounds great, but I don't think that that's likely that that they're going to move off from him. When you've got, that's a place you can build your offensive line around, as your center there. So we'll see. I mean, maybe if he's there, I'll take him, but it does look like to me, Kelsey's the one that's just sitting there looking right in the eye there, if the Eagles do go on a little bit of a loss run on this.
Right. So yeah. But first, let's make sure that we're actually buyers. For all we know, we're going to be the team that's like, oh crap, we're 1-4. Like, let's get to that point first. It's not impossible.
No, it's a tough schedule.
Yeah, it's definitely not impossible. And I don't know. We'll talk about that bridge when we actually have to cross it, but
it's a scary thought, but it might be there, dude. You're right.
Yeah, this will not be a fun. These next 3 games are not necessarily going to be fun. And I'll know a lot more after this Vikings game, because I've seen 2 games from this new offense. One was pretty good, one was pretty bad. And I want to see where it goes from here, because I know Wilson is hearing this criticism of his play after some of the decisions he made against the Titans, which were reasonable criticisms. And I want to see how he responds to that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you get a good idea. Look, when you go through these 3 teams, you're not dealing with 3 defensive juggernauts out the gate. We can talk about what they do offensively, but Colts don't do anything special defensively. The Titans don't really do outside stopping the run anything special defensively. And the Vikings, look, they have a little bit better defense, but it's a bit banged up, and it's not performed as well this season to start things off. So you do have an ability as an offense to theoretically take advantage of that and be able to hit them a little bit hard, put some more points on the board, because you're not dealing. If you don't, to your point, it is indicative of Houston. We may have a little bit of a problem here. This may be a little bit more now of a trend rather than just a one-off game or whatnot. And that's where we now, to your point, can end up in the seller phase, which absolutely could happen and would be explained to they don't use that cap space. They don't convert for us based to bonus, where they may have been sitting here going, we may be in a seller state getting closer to the trade deadline. We may want to flip this and that and try to get some extra picks, being that we don't have a first-round pick in the upcoming draft. It very well. I hope it doesn't. I hope to God that that's not a potential for coming down the track. But you're right. Schedule's hard coming up. It is a possibility. This is not going to be an easy run, especially with our division. And I mean, I don't know about you. I felt like Kyler Murray in that game. He does still throw a couple interceptions. He's still got some things he's kind of refining out. But the guy's got 75% completion percentage to start the year, 7 touchdowns. He's got a 125 passer rating to begin things. He does have a little bit of earmarks of a guy who may now be taking a little bit of a step forward in his development, which is a scary proposition.
Yeah, and it makes sense why he would be. He should be. It's his 3rd year. He's got, in my mind, a great offensive brain as a head coach. I thought that Kingsbury needed to work on some of the fundamentals of being a head coach, but I think that in terms of his ability to draw up an offense, I've always thought he was really good in that regard. And I think that it makes sense that he would be a guy who takes that big next step forward, and it seems like that he is. However, he did start last year really well as well, and it didn't end up going anywhere positive, really. They ended up completely falling apart at the end. So I still feel like a guy who plays like that with his size and with his, slight build is going to get hurt. And he's already gotten hurt a couple times in his career. That's something that I'm definitely watching out for. The way he plays combined with his stature is concerning, but he's clearly very talented.
Yeah. I agree with you. We heard him in last year's game at one point for just he does the little bit of the Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz. I put all these young quarterbacks in that same category of guys who they have not yet learned how to protect themselves at the NFL level. They seem to have that I'm going to live forever Cam Newton approach to playing the quarterback position. And no, you won't. You take so much battering and banging and it does add up. And you saw there was a game. You remember the touchdown in this game? It was an amazing play by Kyler where he drops back. He's in the red zone, drops back. They've got zone defenders sitting three zone defenders sitting inside the 5. And he just hits the second gear and gets in there. And you're like, well, that's going to be like a 7-yard run. And he somehow sideswipes his way to get into the end zone, but he's going head first. There's no slide, running full speed. One guy hits him at that speed and a guy that size just getting decked, getting straight decked. So I would not be surprised as well as even if him taking a step in his development, he still gets popped because he does still run around a little bit there with an abandonment.
Right. Yeah. Let me just say real quick. If I was in his position, I would have chosen baseball 100 times out of 100. You make more money, you don't get hit as much, you can play twice as long. I will never understand why he chose football over baseball. I really don't understand that. So
I don't either. I especially again because I think I have a growing opinion on this that there's a little bit of a situation dealing with these smaller quarterbacks when they get to that size, 5'8", 5'9", 5'9.5". There becomes a point where it's like there's going to be some stuff that's going to limit you that you can't do as a passer at this point. That's going to limit your upside as a quarterback. And as opposed to baseball, where the sky was probably the limit for that kid if he had gone over there and done that. I agree with you. It's going to be interesting if how much money he makes out. But he might have signed a big $200 million contract here after this year because if he's taking a step forward, Cardinals are going to have to pay it, and they're not going to be able to wait on him like you got the Browns waiting on Baker. Browns are going to do the Dak Prescott, stretch that sucker out as far as we can before we finally pay him.
Never a good idea.
So Leland Kimball says, are you guys splitting donos? No, I'm taking all the donos today, Leland. So
we're splitting streams.
Yeah, we're splitting the stream. So pop on to when I go over next week onto Brendan's channel, just save up a little bit of the ducats, save a few of those ducats up and pop on over there. And then on his channel, go to him. So we're gonna keep that balanced in this way. Well, any kind of final, thoughts or anything that's kind of, you want to touch on? We kind of covered a bunch, but just anything that any wild thing that just might be up on your thought process of what's going on right now.
Mariners win. They're 2 games back of the wild card.
You think they got a chance here? You think they're gonna?
Not really, but it's gonna be fun anyway. 9 games left.
I'll tell you, it's beautiful to watch with the Mariner team who for years constantly tried to take shortcuts to becoming a winner, who's now taken the long way around, which is what you've got to do in baseball. It sucks, but it is what it is. It's trust the process in real time. And they've done that. And the future of this team and where they're going is so exciting because you got a young, good roster coming along and they're set up to just, hopefully they can get through this year. Imagine they go win the World Series this year, just come up out of nowhere. They somehow do it. And that'd be awesome. So go Mariners, man. Go Mariners.
Yeah, and about this game, all I really have to say, all that needs to be said really is that I need to see this team win. You lose a game that you had every opportunity to win against the Titans. You have a 2-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter. You do everything wrong almost in that fourth quarter to let it get away from you. I mean, we can talk about the specifics of this game all we want to. We can talk about having Dalvin Cook on the field versus not having him. But I do know that I need this team to just find a way to win, or else things are going to start to go into a bit of a death spiral, I'm afraid. That's really all that needs to be said.
Well, it is. And it's absolutely on point. It's the thing that it is the specter that hangs over this particular season. One of the reasons that folks like myself and Brendan have been advocating for being an aggressive team as we stand right now, using up that cap space, doing all you can to improve this team. If there is an improvement to be made, and maybe it's not now, but into the 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, but pull that string when you need to pull it and don't leave anything on the table. Don't leave anything where you could have done a little bit extra and look at the season in retrospect because of the change that will drive after this year. If you don't, you ignore it, it will be at your own peril as an organization and potentially put us into a state where we're back in a rebuilding mode. We're back to looking for a new coach. We're back looking for a new quarterback. Nobody wants to be there. I don't think wants to be there. And that's where you can still take the bull by the horns of the front office and Coach Carroll here. There's still time to do that. But let's base it on a couple games. Let's see what we get with the Vikings. Let's get some more data on what we're finding from this team.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Brendon. I appreciate you hopping here on the channel as ever. Again, folks, we're gonna do this every week, Thursday, 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. He's on this week. Next week, I'm gonna be on his channel. So please, all of you guys, go over to Seahawks Brendon Nelson's channel. Sub to it right now if you're not sub to it. I don't know why you're not, but come on, sub up. It's good information. And plan on going over there to his channel here next week. Any videos coming down the track you're working on right now?
Oh yeah, I got videos constantly. I got a ton of videos planned up. I do my weekly. I have 5 videos I do every week on a schedule about certain aspects of this team that I think are really worth watching. I do kind of sort of pseudo film study every week at least once. I can't really do film study because the NFL will track me down, but I do the best that I can. So yeah,
the Gestapo.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is kind of unfortunate because I feel like some of these other sports are doing a better job of it. But either way, that's neither here nor there. Yeah, we got all kinds of stuff planned on this channel for sure, on my channel for sure. But you gotta subscribe to find out what it is.
That's right, man. You don't know until you subscribe, and then you get the full notifications, all that stuff. So go over there, do that, Brendon. It's always awesome having you over here on this channel. You do great content, great work over there. Keep it up over there. Let's keep rolling, keep going with this, and hopefully next week we're talking about a dominating Seahawks win over the Vikings on the road. Somebody did post an interesting little bit of optimism for you here at the end that the Seahawks over the last 17 games on the road are 13-4.
Yeah, that's one thing. Mike Holmgren will always be my Seahawks coach because he was the first really good coach that we had. But when Carroll came in, we really started to actually learn how to win on the road and win in more adverse type situations. We didn't do that with Holmgren. I got to say that. Holmgren's always going to be my guy, but we could not win on the road hardly ever when he was,
especially those 10 a.m. games. The 10 a.m. games were a big, stuck in his craw type, and he would lament it. Like he's tried everything up which way but loose, and he just could not solve that 10 a.m. start time. And that's the one we banged. I banged especially a little bit on Carroll at times here on the show. But that is a place where he is good. There are pluses to Carroll's what he does and what he brings as a coach. There are negatives, but there's pluses too. And that is one of the places that I think he doesn't get as much credit for, which he should. Primetime games and playing on the road, getting your team up in the right. That's hard to do. Easier said sometimes than done. So props to Carroll on getting that done. And let's see if maybe we can keep that road warrior schedule winning going as we go forward. So I'll be back on Sunday, folks. I'm going over to Jose Rodriguez's channel here after this stream here. One of my mods, Brendon Nelson. So please hop on over there to Jose Rodriguez after this stream. But other than that, Brendon, I will see you next Thursday, and hopefully we'll be talking about a win. But we got just one last thing to say, of course. We can't forget one last thing.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks, baby.